To recognize my fellow committee members, Councilmember Brewer, Councilmember Farias, Councilmember Ose, Councilmember Juan, Councilmember Menon, who's with us virtually, and Councilmember Abreu. Proposed Intro 31C, sponsored by myself, would establish a permanent outdoor dining program for restaurants by granting licenses and revocable consents to operate sidewalk and roadway cafes across all 5 boroughs of New York City. The city's restaurant industry is an essential part of our social and economic framework. From high-end fine dining to small family-owned institutions, restaurants showcase the breadth of cultures and flavors that make up this great city. Restaurants provide so much for so many: a place to gather, a reason to visit, a venue for a milestone celebration. We recognize the value that restaurants bring to our community, and that's why we work so hard to preserve the integrity of these small businesses during the height of the COVID-19 pandemic. In June of 2020, New Yorkers were enduring an isolated time period. As a result, the city launched an open restaurants outdoor dining program as a temporary solution to the COVID-19 pandemic in order to help save thousands of restaurants and their many employees from losing everything. Solution to the COVID-19 pandemic in order to help save thousands of restaurants and their many employees from losing everything. This program afforded restaurants the ability to reopen their establishments, restore jobs, and provide patrons with a safe place to get outside and share a meal. For families like mine, outdoor dining and sharing these spaces was one of the only opportunities we had to connect with one another and be outside of our homes safely. We learned a lot from this temporary program, and the biggest lesson is that even 3 years later, New Yorkers love outdoor dining. We want to preserve these lessons that we learned and also look forward towards a permanent and sustainable future that works for all of us. We spent years negotiating with various industries and stakeholders to create a uniform program that considers the unique circumstances in each borough and neighborhood. I want to take the time out to thank Rachel Cordero, David Seitzer, Sarah Swain, and Natalie Meltzer for their hard work throughout this process. We applaud restaurants for pivoting during the pandemic and finding creative ways to keep their businesses open. This permanent program will make it possible for restaurants to transition from the temporary program while continuing to operate outdoors. Compared to the pre-pandemic sidewalk dining program, the updated permanent program will be more affordable, more accessible, faster, with less bureaucratic hurdles. The annual fees restaurants pay to the city will be considerably less than the pre-pandemic sidewalk cafe fees. In addition to sidewalk cafes, many restaurants will be able to have roadway cafes, which was part of a pandemic-era program that will be made permanent by this local law. Restaurants in outer boroughs that were once precluded from participating in outdoor dining due to zoning restrictions will now be able to have, for the very first time, a permanent sidewalk and/or roadway cafe. For residents, this bill will return outdoor dining to pre-pandemic setups that we remember. That means that sidewalk and roadway cafes will be limited to open-air layouts with tables, chairs, umbrellas, and planters. The sheds and permanent structures that we have seen will come down, which will improve accessibility and clearances. Further, every council member, I repeat, every council member and community board will receive notice and have an opportunity to voice their opinion and have their voices heard on proposed plans for every cafe application. There's been a range of opinions and perspective on this program, and this bill has to strike the right balance between the needs of small businesses, residents, and other stakeholders, and it must consider the distinct neighborhoods and communities it will impact. It is critical that we establish a permanent program that will support small businesses, create jobs, and generate tax revenue for our city. It is also critical that we do this in a way that is orderly, consistent, and respectful. This bill does just that, and so I urge my colleagues to vote aye. Having reviewed the record before the committee and the technical letter prepared by the Department of Transportation dated July 27, 2023, in connection with CEQR number 21DOT016Y, which is posted on Registrar, which concludes that the proposed legislation would not, and I repeat, would not result in any significant adverse environmental impacts. We will now vote on proposed intro 31C. Clerk, please call the roll.
Excuse me. Good morning. William Martin, Committee Clerk. Roll call vote, Committee on Consumer and Worker Protection. Proposed introduction 31-C. Chair Velasquez.
Aye.
Abreu.
Aye.
Botcher.
No.
Brewer.
I vote aye, but I want to say a couple of things. First of all, you know, I know it's a lot of work to pull this off. I also know that there are going to be rulemakings, and I also hope the DOT will have enough staff to implement. And the rulemaking should include everybody who's supportive or not supportive to get their points across. I know that in a lot of areas there's concern about residential versus commercial, that they're treated the same. I know that in many cases there's a feeling that it is too dense, that residentials, as I said, should not be treated like commercial because the residential areas, at least in Manhattan, are so dense. And I know that there's a constant discussion if you live above a cafe, particularly if it's roadside, but sometimes if it's on the sidewalk, that there is a noise issue. And again, rulemaking, how long will outdoor dining be permitted till midnight, or better, till 10 p.m., which is when non-construction quiet hours are mandated to stop at. And I think there's an issue for cost. I'm concerned because I want Manhattan not to be penalized because we live in Manhattan. There are plenty of small restaurants that should be paying less, I think, although others think they should pay more. So the whole issue of cost, at least in Manhattan. We pay the commercial rent tax, and a lot of these restaurants from Murray up to 96th Street pay an increased tax that other localities do not. I'm also concerned between the April, November, where in the months that you're not having your outdoor road or outdoor roadside, if you choose to do that, where are you going to store that table, chair, anything else? And something I've been bringing up, when the current roadside sheds are taken down, which I think they will be at some point, where does all of that, in some case, beautiful wood and other amenities go? Does it go to the landfill, or can we find a best use elsewhere? So I think that this is still a bill in the making in terms of the future, because rulemaking will determine many of the specifics. I do know that we want to have a city, particularly in the community boards 1, 2, 32, and 5. There's ones. I'm in 6. I certainly have people who are very against any continuation of anything, and then you have people who understand the restaurants have to make a living. So I will predict that in the future these restaurants will pay more because they don't pay anything now, and the difference in terms of the structure may not be as amenable to the public because it won't actually be something that you might feel safe sitting in. On the other hand, if it is good for your business plan and it's the right for the community, you might want to go forward. So it's, as I said, a bill in the making. I vote aye, but much details have to be worked out. Thank you very much.
Farias.
I vote aye, and I would like to be associated with the sentiments of my colleague, Councilmember Brewer.
Menon.
Aye.
Thank you. Osei.
Permission to explain my vote. I vote aye on this bill. I do want to say that I hope that we as a council can work towards a solution of either grandfathering or creating a system where, you know, some of these small businesses who've invested a lot into some of these structures will be able to exist in some future of the city. And I do want to apologize to my mom, who's a small business owner, and will have to take hers down, and my auntie Gwen, who just invested in hers, she'll have to take hers down too, and then also many of my constituents in my district. But I know that this is the best option that we have at hand, and I hope that we can work towards a solution for these small business owners in the future. I vote aye.
Juan.
Aye.
With a vote of 7 in the affirmative, 1 in the negative, and no abstentions, proposed introduction 31C has been adopted by the committee.
All right, with that being said, we now adjourn.